Nerdrotic.com.
How many times have we heard that an audience score is getting review bombed and it doesn't really reflect how people feel about a film? Well, I'm looking at this Joker score and I'm thinking it's pretty dead on, maybe even a smidge low, because the Joker just retook the box office from Disney, from Maleficent 2, which had beaten it the previous week. This is a victory for the Joker, it's a victory for the fandom, and it's a big loss for Disney and members of the Access Media. Before I get started, if you like what I do here, please consider subscribing to the channel. Recently, there has been a change to the algorithm that greatly benefits companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, and ABC, and it does not benefit independent creators like yours truly. If you could like and share the videos as well as much as possible, that would help my videos get traction beyond 24 hours, and that is part of the problem. If you do it with me, I would appreciate it, and if you do it with your favorite YouTuber, I'm sure they would appreciate it as well. The Joker winning the box office over Maleficent 2 is a big deal. Beating out Disney again is a big deal. Destroying the narrative from the ridiculous Access Media is an even bigger deal, especially when some, hashtag not all, in the Access Media really tried to run with that whole incel argument that I think a lot of people are embarrassed about, and they should be. And it looks like the Access Media damn near came around on Rotten Tomatoes. They came this close. Screen Rant of all people. Joker proves Rotten Tomatoes is biased towards mediocre movies. And at first glance, wow, that looks like they made some progress with that headline, but the headline is subjective, and the whole article is about subjectivity with movies, which something Mahler and Rags and Word of Wolf have really gone over to perfection in their reviews, and definitely watch every episode of EFAP. Love those guys. But in this article, we go over the objectivity versus subjectivity of movie reviews and how Rotten Tomatoes is essentially an aggregate of a consensus. And we all know that. We all know that Rotten Tomatoes doesn't get into the nuance of an individual review because it doesn't need to. There's no bias towards mediocre movies. There's a bias towards Disney films and maybe against films that aren't Disney, even though Rotten Tomatoes is owned by NBC Universal, but we do know that the CEO used to be at Disney, and it's one big boys and girls club. Joker just became the highest grossing R-rated movie in history after earning rave reviews and audience acclaim. Rave reviews initially, but that may not be readily apparent from a glance at its score on Rotten Tomatoes. The movie currently stands at 69%, 69, and recently lost its verified fresh status due to a handful of additional negative reviews that came out of nowhere, which I will get to when I get to my conspiracy theory, bumping it out of the verified fresh qualification standards. Now, I will spare you most of this article. It is about the subjectivity of reviews and how it doesn't get into nuance like this paragraph. Joker reviews already prove Rotten Tomatoes is still broken. Unfortunately, the tomato meter also obfuscates a lot of nuance in movie reviews, taking hundreds of words of text and associated 4-star, 5-star out of 10 or letter grade given to a movie and erasing all context in a combined ranking. Not only does this hide more complex views reviewers have about a given movie, but also misrepresents true review scores, and Joker, ironically, proves just how broken the system is. While I agree with some of this article, they don't go far enough, obviously. Despite some pre-release controversy, which I didn't hear much about, but it might have been there, Joker's Venice Film Festival premiere was met with near unanimous praise. Critics were raving, and the movie even brought home the Golden Lion, Venice's award for Best Film for a comic book film. The praise would continue through to the Toronto International Film Festival, where it was met with a slightly less unanimous but still highly positive reception. But that's when the incel stuff started coming in. And they do mention that it wasn't until the lull between film festivals and Joker's October 4th wide release that the negative buzz started to build, primarily from people who had yet to see the film. fears of the movie inspiring violent acts from incels spread as news of police presence at screenings and even a notice to the National Guard began to spread. While this particular complaint didn't seem to be a concern with film critics, it started popping up more and more with more mainstream reviews. That's not exactly true now, is it? It did start concerning certain critics, and I do have to question a few things about it. One of the websites, Vox, that started pushing this incel narrative happens to be funded and possibly owned by the same company that owns Rotten Tomatoes. However, despite the growing buzz of controversy, Joker maintains an average review score of 7.24 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. For comparison, here's some other comic book movies in the same ballpark, and that is with all of those reviewers. If you go to the top critics, it's at 44%, which is really inexcusable and really curious, but it wants to compare it to other films. Here we go. Those other films, well, only one DC film is there. That's an awful lot of Marvel films. You see where I'm going with this? And I still think this film confuses the access media. They still want to believe it's like a right-wing film, it's an elitist situation, when it's not. I watched the film. There's a lot of messages in there that aren't right-wing, and a lot of people on the right love the movie because they can like a movie that they don't necessarily agree with every single message. Plus, the message wasn't glorified, and if it was glorified to some people, well, then therapy is an option. No, it was shown to be quite ugly, the whole eat the rich thing. And it was well done. It was compelling. And I think sometimes people in the media really confuse compelling with identifying. Like Rorschach, for instance, with The Watchmen. He's a very compelling character. It's not somebody I identify with. It's not somebody I want to hang out with and have coffee, but it's an interesting character that makes the story compelling. And that's exactly why audiences are still flocking to the Joker. It's just a good story, and there is no major message or political motivation behind fans enjoying the film. But that is hard for the access media to work out in their heads, because they see everything through the lens of partisan politics nowadays. I don't think critics are biased towards mediocre films, but I do think they're biased towards Disney, who happens to make a lot of mediocre films. But what they are fans of is access. Early access, mentions on Twitter, a retweet from a movie star, a retweet from a creative involved in a film, getting that 480p DVD screener before everybody else so they can talk about it first. And they aren't fans of competition, which there is more and more of every day, and they are losing relevance. And that's why they often go after YouTubers. That's why they have a propensity to push false narratives. And that's where we get to the incel conspiracy, because this thing was pushed by the access media, made up by the access media, and it needs to be shown one more time. And it just took a little bit of investigation, which was like 5 seconds of Googling, and this is what I came up with. For algorithmic reasons, I'm not going to state everything I did Google. We'll just say Joker, families, and incel. And a BuzzFeed article comes up first. But what started this was a Hollywood Reporter article where they talked about the letter from the families of that tragedy. And then it was other access media outlets that started putting the word incel in there, and a lot of people ran with it, especially our buddy Corey Plant from Inverse. If you don't remember Corey, well, he is the shill that went after our friend, the Overlord DVD, and he has done a video on that. I will link it in the description, and you can see that headline, and I'm not going to read it for obvious reasons. The U.S. military warns that there may be a significant threat coming during release weekend. And I did go through a metal detector and did get patted down to go see it at the Alamo Drafthouse in New York. An incel walks the earth his entire life without even a single woman acknowledging his existence. Does said incel really exist? Now, he found a blog post from 2016 that calls a certain horrific person a hero, who I will not name, and I'm going to block out his name from this article. This is what you call pushing a false narrative that was dangerous, but the usual suspects ran with this. And I'm not going to say that they were pushing it, but they were giving it a lot of consideration, more consideration than they would give other things. And I'm talking about the usual suspects like Vulture, Vox, IO9, Esquire, and of course, Inverse. Again, this narrative was absurd, and that's why groups like the Fandom Menace and my channel exist, to try to point this out once in a while, to help break the narrative. Now, I am fortunate enough not to be a news agency. I can speculate about what I want. I can talk about rumors as much as I want, as long as I tell you that's what I'm doing. Now we are going to get into conspiracy territory. Now, on face value, I think the truth of the matter is that this narrative was made up by the access media for political reasons, to push a political narrative. And that was behind the initial letter, unfortunately, that was sent to the Hollywood Reporter. If you read the letter, you can see them talking about, well, a political organization. Whatever side you're on that argument, it doesn't matter. I'm not here to debate that. But who benefits from this stuff? Well, obviously the access media, but if you really want to dig into the weeds, Warner Brothers really benefited from this. So we can consider that this was genius Warner Brothers marketing. Or who would be the biggest competition to Warner Brothers? Well, Disney. And Disney just got embarrassed by The Joker. Like I said before, The Joker is the #1 film of the year, the most profitable film of the year, and the most loved film of the year, except by a few access media top critics. Again, it's at 44%. That's a little low. If it's at like 65, 68, I could understand that, because the access media always has to see something through a political lens. That's why I think the audience scores are way more accurate. The audience scores have been much closer in a lot of things. Now, I'll say the Batwoman score is probably a little too low. I think Doctor Who's just about right, Star Trek Discovery just about right, The Last Jedi just about right, and Captain Marvel is spot on. So we will get to some of the reviews now, but again, The Joker won the weekend at the box office. It's phenomenal. We want to celebrate this because we simply just need to praise the good, and there's so little of it out there. If you see this Deadline article, Dark Fate comes out this weekend, and while I would love for The Joker to beat it, I don't think it will, but I have seen it. I will be doing a review in a couple of days, and it is as awful as you think it is. It is everything wrong with current year filmmaking. Now, we are going to go to You the People. I will not be going over any critic reviews on this because I've already done a video. You can check it out right here. Now, the audience score is at a very respectable 89%. I still think that's a smidge low. And look what they highlight. They highlight, well, some mediocre reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. We start with Diana R, 4.5 stars. It is a movie that is totally worth watching because it tells us a true story of how society is destroying people and building monsters daily. And there you go, Access Media. Diana R picked up a message that you would probably agree with. Bruce B, 5 stars. I love the different take on the character. I expected to be creeped out and I was not disappointed. And there you go, Bruce B watched a supervillain origin story. MR, or Mr. Felix, for 5 stars. A new classic. It made me feel like I was watching a nostalgic 80s movie. This movie does not tie into the other Batman movies, but it is still an incredibly entertaining movie to add to your favorites list. It's the most entertaining movie I have seen in the movie theaters in a long time. Joel Flores, 4 stars, verified. Great standalone film explaining Joker's origin and the development of his psychotic personality to the Joker we all know and love. Not what you would expect, but it's what you need. And notice that he says we all know and love. There are some in the access media who would take that literally and think that Joel Flores would identify with the Joker instead of appreciating a compelling story. Aisha I, 4 stars. Though the film has a few logical errors and a couple scenes go on longer than they need to, Joaquin Phoenix's phenomenal acting and the excellent camera work and set design easily put this movie on my list of must-see films of 2019. I totally agree, Aisha. As a matter of fact, I agree so much, I made my own review. Gary B, 5 stars. Best film of the year goes to DC. Bravo! I keep falling off that incel wagon. I will try again tomorrow. There is no question that the Access media started the false incel narrative, but to what end? Was it just for clickbait, or were they trying to make some political message? Was it genius Warner Brothers marketing, or was it Disney working in the background to bring down their biggest competition? I can believe all of these things. If you've worked in any kind of corporate environment for any amount of time, you have seen dirty tricks like this. I have seen it in the comic book industry, and I have seen it recently in the auto industry at a company that I used to work with, but I can't say much about because I've signed NDAs. Doesn't matter. The Joker is the biggest hit of the year. The same year that Endgame came out, the same year that Rise of Skywalker is going to come out. I don't think the Joker is going to win those meaningless awards that everybody wants it to win, because I still think there's a bias towards this film. I still think that there will be more critics liking Rise of Skywalker than Joker. Doesn't change the fact it's still the best film of the year, and DC comes out looking great. Unfortunately for Warner Brothers, they just hired Jar Jar Abrams for $500 million to come and screw up their universe when DC was doing the right thing. They were on the right path. Aquaman, not a great film, but enjoyable. Shazam, I liked. They were moving in the right direction, but we've got Birds of Prey coming out. Batwoman is on the air, and so is Watchmen. So 1 step forward, 5 steps back. That is DC. We will keep an eye on Rotten Tomatoes, though. We have Dark Fate coming out in a few days. My review comes out in a couple days. Everybody, have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.